Good afternoon, everyone. This is Kate Alder from Irvine Valley College. So glad you could join us today. If you have questions, you can go ahead and put them in the chat area down here. And I'm going to show you a screen in just a moment or two. So I'm going to give everybody a couple of more minutes. We've got about 25 people who are here right now. I'm going to give it till about a minute or so after the hour, and then we'll get started. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, and I'll be back with you in just a moment. Okay, hi everybody. This is Kate Alder with Irvine Valley College. We're the fiscal agent for the Career Cafe grant, which is an SB 70 funded grant, as most of you know. So welcome to the 2013 Career Cafe webinar series with Dr. Kate Brooks. I will be your technical support person, so if you notice on your screen, you can see that you'll be able to see over to the top right corner of your screen an area where there's questions and a chat area. So if you have questions or you want to post a question for Kate Brooks, then that's the place to do that. Throughout the webinar, I'll be monitoring those areas, and if you have technical questions, I will respond back immediately to you individually. If you have questions for Kate Brooks, I'm going to hold on to those, and at the end of Kate's presentation, then I will go ahead and facilitate asking those questions and getting those answers for you. I've just noticed that Susan Coleman, hi Susan, welcome aboard, put a message in the chat. She wants to know if it's going to be archived, and yes it is. It's being recorded right now, and the archive of it will be posted on the California Career Briefs website, and I think I posted the URL is right here. So it's cacareerbriefs.com, and then it's in the Career Development Advisory Committee area. So if you have any questions, again, please send them to me through this screen, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over now to Rita Jones, and then she'll be introducing Kate Brooks to you. So hold on for one moment, and here's Rita.
Okay, hello everyone. Let me get my screen up here. Okay. All right, welcome to all of you that are able to join us today for our new webinar series with Kate Brooks. It's called Fun New Tips and Tools for Career Planning, and we're going to meet here every other Friday. That's every 2 weeks. For 4 sessions. Now today, January 11th, we're talking about social media and the job search, helping our students know how to tweet, link, and Pinterest their way to a job, which I am really interested in this topic. I'm really pleased she's doing this one. January 25th, it's dealing with quiet students, the introvert in the job search. February 8th, Make Your Own Job Coaching Students Toward Entrepreneurship. And the last one on February 22nd is Working with Creative Students, Supporting Dreams and Testing Reality. As Kate Alder just mentioned, all these webinars will be recorded and archived. And at the end of the series, I will, in addition, send you a link to make sure you know where those are being housed. But they are on cacareerbriefs.com underneath the Career Development Advisory section. Now, we're able to bring you these webinars and all our other career resources with funding provided by the California Community College Chancellor's Office. So let's talk about Kate Brooks a little bit. It's my pleasure to get to introduce Kate to you today, and I know many of you already know her because she's been working with us for a couple of years doing some great trainings. I honestly don't have enough time to tell you about all of her accomplishments, but let's just look at a couple of important ones. And as you can see on the slide, Kate has a master's degree in vocational rehabilitation, her doctorate's in educational psychology, pardon me, from West Virginia University. And she is the author of You Majored in What? Mapping Your Path from Chaos to Career. From my perspective, Kate is the career professional's professional. She's really the one that we go to really stay current in our field. And by the way, I didn't mention Kate is full-time Career Center Director at the University of Texas at Austin. I really love the creativity and expertise that she's bringing to our projects. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Kate and turn it over to her. Thanks. We'll change it over to her now as soon as I can get the screen there. Okay, there we go.
Am I on?
Sorry, one more. Now it's yours.
Are we okay?
Yes.
Okay. Can you see my screen or, yeah.
Kate Brooks, this is Kate Alder. Excuse me for interrupting. I have an attendee who wants to know if it's appropriate for students to be sitting in on this session.
Oh, there's no problem if students are here.
Okay, thank you for sharing that information.
Sure.
Thank you.
And that's helpful to know. Thanks. All right. Are we good now with the screen? Everyone can see it, I hope. All right.
Yes.
So I'm going to go ahead. All right. So this is the topic today is social media and the job search, and this is I've got to tell you, this is a rapidly evolving topic. What I say today, it's sort of funny that we're recording this because I think we should have this recording disappear in about 6 months, because by that time there will be something new, there will be something else that I haven't brought up, and so you kind of have to stay tuned and stay interested in this stuff to really learn it. But it's a very important topic. You know, like the slide here says, there's so many sites, there's so many conversations, and there's so little time. So it is important to know how to spend your time on social networking if you're using it in the job search so that you don't waste a lot of time. And of course, one of the challenges is that you can spend some time, you know, just enjoying reading stuff, and you kind of get on a Google kick or whatever, and the next thing you know, you have wasted an hour or maybe even more. So it's just important to plan ahead and to be thinking these things through. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Social media is the #1 activity on the web. When people are on the web, they are generally involved with social media. In fact, you may not know this, but whoops, I'm sorry, my computer's overreacting here. 4 of the 7 highest traffic websites or social media sites, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter, are 3 of the most trafficked sites out there. And 3 out of 4 people in the United States use social networks regularly, 2/3 worldwide. So again, it is just so pervasive. If Facebook were a country, it would be the 3rd largest country in the world. We have China, we have India, and then we have Facebook, which I find just really fascinating, and it tells you just the reach. And for students who might be seeking an international position, that again tells you that the reach is international, which is terrific. There are over 200 million blogs. So if you're thinking of starting a blog, you'll be 200 million and one. And every day there's about 900,000 blog posts that are put up. So there certainly is no end to the amount of information that you can get. But, you know, it isn't just about social media. What we really want to talk about is job searching and how you can use it in that process. So one of the things to keep in mind is, first of all, recruiters use it. According to a survey on jobvite.com, a website that deals with the job search, they said that 92% of companies use LinkedIn, Facebook, and or Twitter in some way for recruiting. And you can see by the little graphic that I've put up there, LinkedIn is the bulk, is certainly the biggest player. But Facebook's in there, and so is Twitter. And when they say use it for recruiting, that means a lot of different things. It could mean they use it to search candidates, which they do, but it also means they put information onto social media about their jobs and about their companies and things, so that the world of social media is very important for a company in terms of getting its message out. I like this quote from Dan Schawbel, and I'll mention his book again at the end because I recommend this. If you're looking for a good resource, Dan Schawbel writes a book called Me 2.0, and it's written for students, so it's very student-oriented, and I think it's a great resource to use with them. And as you can see, he says, your first impression isn't made with a firm handshake, it's with a Google search. So that just begins to tell you the importance, again, of social media and wanting to make sure that you have a good social media presence. And so that's going to be the focus. I'm going to talk for probably about half an hour here because I know that on these webinars sometimes it gets a little long when somebody's just talking at you. So I hope you will have questions and things in mind as I talk through this. Key points that you want to remember. Whether this is for your own social media presence, for either your office or yourself, or if you're going to be instructing your students, the first thing is have a strategy. Know why you're on there. Most of us initially get on social media because it's fun, and that's why we're there. We go into Facebook and we create our little, you know, our own profile, and there are profiles and pages on Facebook, and I'll mention that later. But we create our profiles, and the whole point is to connect with our friends and to have fun. And I think that's particularly true for students over the years. In junior high school and high school and so on, they really spend a lot of time on social media for fun. They're into Foursquare. They're into all these things, and they're you know, tweeting. If they're using Twitter, they're tweeting to friends about where they had lunch today, that sort of thing. So when you start thinking about it for the job search, you want to have a strategy. You want to be thinking about what are the different social media sites that I most want to be in tune with, which are the ones that I want to have a professional face on, how often am I going to check them, and so on. So having a plan. And then this is something that should apply to all of us all the time. Never post when you're in an emotional state. And that's true, you know, whether you're angry, whether you're upset. I can almost always tell when I'm going to get a email from a student that might be less than pleasant, because I'll see that little thing on their email that says sent from my iPhone. The idea is that when somebody's sending an email reply using an iPhone, it's very up to the minute. They're sending it probably the second they get that message, and they're not taking a second to think. There's a wonderful quote from Viktor Frankl where he says, between the stimulus and the response, there's a pause. And in that pause is our power and our control. And I think that's a quote that is so applicable to social media. You need to pause. Social media wants you to react quickly, do this rapidly. If I'm on my iPhone, I get an email on my iPhone that basically says, you know, that maybe a professor's written me or something. My temptation is to just immediately reply because it's efficient. But sometimes you need to pause because you just need to make sure that you're not going to snap at them or whatever. And the same thing is true of social media for professional purposes. You don't want to get on your Twitter feed when you're angry or upset. Another thing to keep in mind, just generally, social media is here. It's not going anywhere, but the tools are temporary. So that right now, today, we're talking LinkedIn, Facebook, Pinterest, Twitter. Who knows? 6 months from now, there'll be a whole new site. I have a book on social media marketing that came out about a year ago, and she talks a lot about, you know, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and then she says, the next big thing is video. Well, no, not really. The next big thing turned out to be Pinterest, but Pinterest probably wasn't even being mentioned when she wrote the book. So it's very hard to predict. So the only thing I can tell you is just know that it's going to be out there, but it is going to change. Also, this is really important. You don't own any of these sites. So anything that you've posted is potentially lost if that site goes under. So you want to keep that in mind. LinkedIn, I don't think is going under anytime soon. But if you have a LinkedIn profile, I'd recommend you keep a copy of it somewhere. You know, either do a copy and paste and put it in a Word document, something. Because if for any reason that site would disappear, you don't want to lose all the stuff you've created for it. You also want to stay ahead of the curve, and you want to experiment with new ideas and platforms, because that's what people are doing, that's what the businesses are doing, and so particularly for students in the job market, if you're looking for a career that relates to social media, you want to be the expert ahead of time. So things to keep in mind when you're doing social networking for jobs. First of all, you want to think about, what is my content? What do I want to share with people? So that's part of that plan when I was saying have a strategy. You know, what is most relevant and important to an employer? You know, what do they want to know? Is my material going to be smart and creative and positive? And how can I inform people and engage people? Those are things to think about with your content. Then in terms of the key sites and platforms, you want to join the conversation. You want to follow, particularly on Twitter or through LinkedIn. You want to connect with key leaders, people who can help you in this profession. And you certainly want to connect with professional organizations and other groups like that. And once again, the word strategy comes into mind. You really want to be strategic. Now, this is, again, a point to remember when you talk about your content. For instance, let's say in a Twitter feed. If you're going for a career in something, or for instance, my Twitter feed is about careers, not surprisingly, and most of what I post is career-related. Now, I have a private life, of course, and one of my favorite things to do there is I'm a musician, and so I like to perform and play guitar and do that kind of thing, but I never tweet about it, because that is irrelevant to the audience that I have developed on my site, and that's something to keep in mind. You can have more than one Twitter feed. So if I really wanted to write about music, I'd set up another feed, put it under a different name, you know, maybe create some sort of moniker, and I would go from there. But you don't want to do that in terms of the job search. If you are using Twitter or LinkedIn or anything for your job search, then that's what it needs to be for, and you don't want to mix it up with other stuff. You don't want to put on Twitter what you had for lunch today. So in terms of using social media, the one I'm going to talk about the most are LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, and a little bit about Pinterest. Now, there's also obviously lots of other things out there. Certainly Craigslist is an example of a way that I hear students talk about getting jobs all the time. And I think the only thing to know mainly about Craigslist is, yes, it can be a good resource for local jobs, and particularly part-time and jobs that are sort of immediate for companies, internships, all of that. The other thing to keep in mind, though, is there are a lot of scams connected with Craigslist. And there are scams everywhere, but I think Craigslist seems to attract more, and you want to just be careful about that. Always investigate job opportunities very carefully. Jobster is just another site that has job listings. YouTube, I think everybody's familiar with that. And I'm not going into detail because I think YouTube is great for certain people. If you have some sort of audiovisual sort of background, or you're creating YouTubes that are related to your career, well, by all means, then use that. But I think for the average person, most of us don't create YouTube videos, certainly not YouTube videos that we're interested in marketing to an employer. So I'm not going to talk about YouTube very much today. eAcademy is a British site. That's another one that, again, has just lots of job links and lots of potential things for employment. And then there's always online publishing in general, ebooks, blogs, all of that is, of course, another way to get your name out there. But again, I'm going to assume that most of the folks listening to this and most of your students are not necessarily going to be publishing ebooks and doing blogs. They're going to be doing more of the basic social media. So let's start with the kind of the leader of the whole group, and that's LinkedIn. And I suspect most of you are already familiar with LinkedIn, so I'm going to make an assumption that you already have a LinkedIn profile yourself and that you know what that's about. LinkedIn is really, I've heard it been described as a professional billboard, and I think that's a good way to think about it. LinkedIn, you want to use public settings. You want your picture out there. You want your profile out there. So when you use LinkedIn, you use it with the knowledge that anybody and everybody can look at it. So it's very public, and therefore everything needs to be well done. It needs to be professional, of course. For many people, when they go to look at LinkedIn sites, the only thing they see initially is your picture and your headline. So if that's all they're going to see about you, you want to make sure that those two things present you very well. So obviously the picture needs to be professional, and you want it to be something that's relatively close up to your face, not a full body picture, or a picture where you're in a distance and they can see, just see too much of background. And your summary should be something that tells about you, not your job title. You would not put Director of Career Services, blah, blah, blah. That's not a good heading, because that's going to go in your jobs. You want to have something that highlights your skills and your strengths. And the same thing for a student. You don't want it to just say student at XYZ Community College. You actually want that to be something that will be meaningful, such as students seeking, college students seeking opportunity in, and then maybe name the field that you're looking for the job in. Or you might say what your major is, and have English major seeking opportunity in the marketing field. So that right away, if all an employer or somebody sees is your picture and your heading, they will know right away who you are, and they'll know a little bit about you. So you do have space to do that. Also, LinkedIn allows you to post your resume. And what you want to be thinking about there is the resume you post there should not have your home address. That's the only change I make in my online resume. I try not to have my home address. Just have in my case, I have my work address on there. But for somebody who's not currently employed or is seeking employment, and you don't want to put your current work address as your address, just put your phone number or your email. All you need is a way for people to reach you. Do not put your street address. You also can post things like PowerPoints, and you can put in things like relevant classes. This is a place where your students can list the most relevant classes that they've taken. And if they've done internships or they've had other experiences, again, there's lots of place in the summary and elsewhere to put that. There's even a section on classes, so they can add that in. Certificates are another thing. If they've acquired any certificates or they're working toward a certificate, that's another great thing to put in there. And back to that word relevant. They need to think that through. They don't want to just put all 20 classes they've taken. That will overwhelm the reader. They need to pick the 2 or 3 classes that are most relevant to the employer or to the career field that they're seeking. And I know that one of the things that's going to come up here is, well, what if they don't know yet? Well, if they don't know what they're seeking, then they still want to present themselves in the best possible light, and maybe pick the 3 classes that are most relevant to a job search. So for instance, they might have loved their course in poetry, but that may or may not be something that's going to grab an employer. So it might be better to pick a different course that's more career relevant. And that's what I would say, just generic career relevant. They also want to join groups. Groups are very important. Groups are a way, one of the ways groups help you is if you get into a group, you can send inline messages to other members of that group in a way that you can't if you're just out there in LinkedIn. So finding groups that relate to your profession are very important. Also, obviously, job openings are posted all the time on LinkedIn. So that's another thing, to have it feed you job openings. And LinkedIn has a way of doing that. It will feed you job openings related based on what it thinks you want, and there are ways to refine that. And then, I mentioned the picture. Again, you do want to do a professional picture. And one of the things that you might try, if you haven't already, we have started having a camera in our office that's always available for us to take pictures of students for their LinkedIn accounts. We also, at our job fairs, always have we call it the photo booth. It's not really a booth. We just have a blank screen, and students can sit in front of that screen, because when they come to a job fair, they're usually a little better dressed, and so that's like a perfect time to take a LinkedIn photo. So we do that for them. So you might want to think about, if you're running a workshop and using some of this material and you're going to talk to your students about LinkedIn, maybe you bring along a student or somebody who's willing to take photographs, and you could even bring a professional looking shirt or blouse or something that students could put on, and you could take their picture. whatever. So, I would just sort of think about some creative ways to help them with that process, because that can actually be a challenge for some students, I have found. So I don't know how easy this is for you all to read on your home screens, but this is sort of a picture, a snapshot that I took. I decided to pick the career. I noticed many of you have majors in retail merchandising, and I thought, well, let's go with that. And so I went into LinkedIn, into groups, and I typed in retail merchandising, and immediately I got potentially linked to I think it's something like 150-something results. So the first one is the Retail Industry Professionals Group. There's a Retail Management, Retail Industry Professionals Worldwide, Retail Buying and Merchandising, and so on. So if your students joined a couple of those groups, they could then, of course, have access to the members. They could find out who the members are. Maybe there's even individuals who graduated from your schools with that degree who are working for those organizations. So it would be a way to connect, and it's a it's a great way to just find out what's going on in that field. Another thing that we can talk about is Twitter. And Twitter, again, I hope I'm not saying too much elementary stuff for those of you who already know how Twitter works, but Twitter is just a very short feed of little snippets of information. They call them tweets, and they basically, you create your account and then you start following people. And you get to pick who you follow. Now, you don't get to pick who follows you. Now, sometimes you'll find it's some strange person, and you can eliminate them, so there's no problem with that. But otherwise, people are just going to follow you. I recommend if you're setting up a Twitter account for the job search, you want to use your real name. You want to keep it, of course, professional. Remember, public setting. And you want to set it to public. I think it's really troublesome when somebody uses their real name and then they set their account to private. Because what they're doing is they're limiting who can see it, their tweets, and usually it's because they have friends and they just, they only want their 20 friends to see their tweets. The problem is it doesn't take the employer anywhere. They see it and they go, well, okay, she's got a feed, but I can't see it. And it actually can raise some suspicions of what's she tweeting about that I can't see. So if you have an account under your name, I would recommend you make that one public, and then create a second account, again, if you want to do tweets about, here's the best restaurant I've found. And right at the beginning of Twitter, you can create a short bio. Once again, great place to say seeking opportunity in or looking for a job. There's a nice amount of characters. I think it's about 120 characters for your bio. So that's a nice amount of space to work with. They also have a place where you can put a link. So this would be a place where you could link to your LinkedIn account, or you could link if you have an online resume somewhere. Maybe you have a website or whatever, or somewhere else you've posted your resume. Anyway, it's a great way to, you want to make that the most important link that the employer would want to go to. So your LinkedIn profile might be it. You can follow all the key people in your industry. Again, you want to be consistent with your messages. Going back to that strategy, why am I here? So a lot of your messages really need to be about how can I inform people, how can I let people, and it isn't just about you. You can tweet messages about your field. So we used retail merchandising, and if I were planning a career in that field, I might start tweeting about retail merchandising. I might say, saw this great display at Macy's today, and tweet that out. Or I might say, here's an interesting article on, and then do a link to an article. Or here's Yahoo News today just said retail is down, 30% in this market. You just are providing information. And what will happen is people who are interested in retail merchandising will start linking to you. They will start following you. And Twitter has these little things that it's called a hashtag, and I'm sure most of you have heard of that. It's just the pound key, and then you put a topic after it. So you could do pound retail. And so if you start doing your tweets, and then at the end of your tweet you do pound retail, what will happen is anybody that does a search on Twitter for the word retail, your link is going to come up, or your tweet, excuse me, is going to come up. So they'll be able to read it. So it's amazing how quickly people follow you. And, you know, it's funny, I'm always amazed at how different tweets attract different people. So, for instance, I usually tweet about career stuff, and then one day I quoted, I think it was Edgar Allan Poe, of all things. All of a sudden, I started getting all these Edgar Allan Poe followers. They started following me. So you never know who's going to follow you or why, but that's okay. The idea is you're getting your name out there, and as long as you're getting it out in a very positive way, that's what you want to do. So you just, again, you want to think about just what do I want to share. There's a site called TweetDeck, and if you get into Twitter, I recommend you go to TweetDeck because TweetDeck will help you organize your Twitter feed so it won't be so overwhelming. So I wanted to just quickly show you here. I decided again to do retail merchandising, and as you can see, all I did was I typed into the Twitter feed, I did Twitter/retail. One of the first things that came up was this thing called Business of Fashion, and they have all kinds of interesting tweets about fashion, the fashion industry. And then I also found this one, New York Fashion Jobs. So there are Twitter feeds that are devoted just to finding jobs, and they can get very specific like this. So here, you know, this is an example of that. And then Macy's College. Macy's has a site that is just for college students, and it's all about jobs, and it's all about internships. So again, if you have students who are thinking of a career in retail merchandising, maybe they're looking for an internship, they like Macy's, this might be your place. So this is the way Twitter can really be helpful. And you'll see, if you go on any of those, you'll see conversations between people with like job seekers even, you know, who will be tweeting back and forth with the recruiter or whoever the person is that's running that. So that's again why that professional aspect is so important, that because you will, it's what that early quote said, it's not about a handshake, it's about a Google search. And so instead of shaking hands with a recruiter, you're tweeting back and forth with a recruiter. So it's just as important that that tweet be as professional as your handshake. So I want to move on now to Pinterest. And again, I don't know how many of you already use Pinterest. Personally, I don't use it, but I have a lot of friends who do. And I do go on Pinterest and look around sometimes, even though I don't have an account. It really was originally designed as almost like a bulletin board where you could pin up, you know, things you liked. And so there's a lot of places for really good recipes. If anybody's looking for recipes, go to Pinterest. Fashions, you know, all sorts of things like that. And I do think that it still is primarily more valuable for folks in the creative fields. But, you know, you never know. If you search the word resume on Pinterest, you will get lots of interesting resume ideas. So before you run your next resume workshop, do a search on Pinterest. You'll be amazed. And you can also do things like graphic design resumes. Or I did one today on infographics. You know, I really like infographics. I think they look great. And so I did career infographics. And wow, did I get some really cool ideas of ways to promote my office. And again, this is just Pinterest using it as a sort of a passive site to get information from. But you can also, of course, create an account and start posting things. And so lots of people have their resume posted on Pinterest. Again, just remember, if you post your resume there, it's likely to be shared. You know, people may like it or they may borrow it or whatever. So things can be shared. You could even create a visual resume or a visual biography if you wanted to. Like I could put up, I work at the University of Texas right now, and I could put, you know, my current employer, I could put the University of Texas, and maybe put a picture of my office if I wanted to. So you really can create kind of a scrapbook almost. So this is a great idea, particularly, again, for creative folks, anybody who needs to do a portfolio or needs to show examples of their work. If you have a student who's interested in photography, you know, in addition to Flickr, of course, this would be another, Pinterest would be another place they might want to post some of their photos and things. So you really can create an interesting site on Pinterest, and also, like I said, just go into Pinterest and look around if you haven't. Certain career sites like Career Bliss use Pinterest a lot. So, you know, again, it's just another door in. And so what I did here was, as you can see, it's asking me to join because I'm not a member, but this is one of the things that I got when I pulled up Resume. And as you can see, there's a kind of a traditional resume on the left that clearly somebody's critiquing it and showing, showing students what they need to do, which is really great. And then also there's some examples there of very interesting kind of creative resumes, and that's the sort of thing I think is really fun, and students find it very interesting and all that. Word of warning to any of the career folks out there, I know we have some students online as well, but to the career folks who are watching this, if you do a workshop and you want to show a page, do what I've done here. Do a screen catch of the screen rather than going live. The challenge of going live with all of these sites, Pinterest, Twitter, whatever, you don't know what's going to come up. And certainly with Pinterest, I had some very interesting photos that came up first, and you know, because you just can't control it, and so you can end up showing stuff you'd rather not show, and so do a screen capture like this. Here's an example of Pinterest when I pulled it up for fashion. That was one where I quickly learned it was important to do a screen, some sort of a screen capture rather than what was the first thing that came up, because I think the first thing that came up was a girl in a bikini, and I thought, well, that's probably not what we want to show. So, you know, again, do a screen capture. But that's, you know, there you go. You know, people post their favorite fashions or whatever, and that would be something fun for people to do. I'm going to move a little more quickly. I realize I'm taking more time than I should be right now. So, researching a career field using social media. One of the things you want to think about is who are the key employers and what is their social media presence and how do you connect to them. So certainly a student who is involved in social media, you want to get to the key employers and their social media presence. You want to do things like the typical roles in the field and find out what the qualities are needed to succeed. That's something you can look for as you go to these sites. You certainly want to look for professional organizations, and if they have their own Twitter feed, then you definitely want to get onto their, you know, follow their Twitter feed to see what's going on. And quite often you don't even have to join the organization to get their Twitter feed. That's something you can get just on your own. You want to know where are the key websites, who are the key bloggers in the field, and you want to know what LinkedIn groups are worth joining, and certainly what Twitter feeds to follow. Facebook, the challenge with Facebook is that, and I didn't highlight it here too much because I figure everybody pretty much knows Facebook and I didn't want to take your time with that. Facebook, the thing to keep in mind is your settings. You will have public settings, of course, on LinkedIn and Twitter, but not so much on Facebook. That's where you want to make sure you've battened down the hatches and only friends can see your site. And I generally don't recommend Facebook as much for the job search. You certainly can like companies, and there are companies that have pretty strong presence on Facebook. Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, for instance, have very strong presence. And that's great, but you just need to know that when you like their site, they can grab information about you. So that's where you want to make sure your settings don't permit them to grab very much. And you want to make sure that whatever your photo is on Facebook, that it's a nice enough photo or it's a generic enough photo, because they will be able to see that. I have a page for my book, and I have followers. I have people who have liked me. And I can go into their profiles, and if they have not put their profiles on private, I can see so much about them, probably much more than they ever wanted me to see. So that's just something to keep in mind. But again, social media is so good for researching and getting all the information that you want about a field. So here, for example, following again this retail design or the retail merchandising, I went into retail merchandising blogs, and this is a blog that came up. Apparently there's awards given for various displays, and this is one from Budapest of all places, and the blogger is talking about this. Now what a student could do, they might not want on this particular blog, but what they could do is start getting into a conversation with the blogger. They could like their picture, and they could say things like, "I really like this picture," or "I really like this," and put their name. If they write an intelligent comment, put their name with it, because we'll talk in a minute about getting noticed on the internet, and that's one way to do it. So that's kind of a nice example. This is a little less fascinating, but they need a little work on their site. But this is a website for an organization, the American Purchasing Society. And as you can see, you can get a lot of information about that society, that professional organization. You can find their Twitter feeds, you can find their information, and you can, again, get more information about your career field. So that's just another really good way to research and connect with organizations and companies. Now, I want to take the last few minutes to talk about problems, because there are. And as you can imagine, one problem is too much sharing, failing to set the appropriate security levels. So once again, Facebook, batten down the hatches. The other one's public, and make sure everything's professional. And as I said early on, one of the challenges, most of us think of social media as fun and entertainment. And so our messages aren't always aligned with our career goals. So you just want to be thinking about, who's my audience, who do I want to have read this, and what do I want to have them know about me? Now here's a rather commonly known problem. We like to call it digital dirt. And it has to do with things that are out there on the internet about you that might not be as flattering. And I got to tell you, it isn't just drinking. I wish it were just a picture of somebody with a wine glass. It actually can be more than that. And this is an example. And this is an example that happened with one of my students this year. The student did a Google search on his name, and I'm going to be talking about that in a minute. And up came this, the first thing that was posted was, Bob Smith, whatever the student's name was, mugshot. He apparently had had a DUI several years earlier. It had all been resolved. His record was supposed to be expunged. He had done the things he needed to do, but there are these sites, because mugshots are public. The sheriff's office posts them. They're public information. There are websites that will grab your mugshot. And I put in those black bars. Those black bars that you're looking at are not normally there. If you go to that website, you can see the person's full face and their name. And so that's why when someone's name is Googled, this mugshot picture may be one of the first things that shows up. And what these companies do is they charge a fee to take down your mugshot. The problem is, the minute one company takes it down, another company will post it. There are people who have spent literally thousands of dollars trying to have these things removed. They're very hard to do. So far, legally, it may be a little slimy, but it's legal to do this. So this is something that, again, you'll want to warn your students about, and it's why it's so important to do a Google search on your name. Interestingly enough, I'm going to stop here a minute and let you all read the cartoon. I really like that. I love that last line. His interview skills are crazy good. This is an unexpected source of digital dirt, misspellings. I think this is interesting. Among recruiters, poor spelling rated worse than drinking, than a picture of someone drinking. Now, I'm a little surprised. It says recruiters reacted negatively to drugs 78%. You'd think that'd be 99%, and so I don't know what the actual question was or what kind of drug they were talking about. So we'll let that one go. But 54% responded negatively to poor spelling, and then 47% to drinking. So I think that's worth keeping in mind. If you have a LinkedIn profile or any of this stuff, spell correctly. You just need to spell check it, make sure that everything is correct on it, because spelling will hurt you just as much as a picture of drinking. So how do we clean this all up? We're almost at the end here. The first thing you need to do is you need to research yourself. So search your name on Google, Yahoo, and Bing. If your name is something like Bob Smith, then you're going to need to do Bob Smith, California, Bob Smith, Los Angeles, something that is unique, Bob Smith and something community college, whatever. See what shows up. The minute you see what shows up, you can start categorizing it. Is it good? Is it neutral? Is it bad? And I think I'll let you be the judge of all of that. But, to me, good is something positive, like maybe my blog shows up if I Google my name. Neutral is, well, not the best picture on earth. Somebody snapped a picture of me at a conference, and I don't look so good. But, that's the world of picture taking. Bad is when something really bad shows up. A picture of somebody who's been drinking, or the whatever. You also want to identify any evil or famous twins, and the reason you do that is who has your name. Lots of people might have your name, and they might have more stuff out there on the web than you do. One of my good friends, her name is Elizabeth Alexander, and she runs her own business, and she had a heck of a time because when President Obama was elected, at his inauguration, they invited this very famous poet named Elizabeth Alexander. And for a while there, if you typed in Elizabeth Alexander, you had to go through a page or two of the poet before you ever saw that there was someone else named Elizabeth Alexander. So my friend ended up changing her name for her website. She called herself Dr. Liz, and that differentiated her. She was able to no longer conflict with that famous person. But that is something you just need to be aware of. I had another friend who, his name was the same as a very famous bank robber in Australia who was still on the loose. And so he used to even joke. He would say to employers, you know, when you Google me, you know, I'm not the bank robber from Australia. It's the other one. And so one thing to do to help with that is on your resume, anything you send to an employer, have a hyperlink to your LinkedIn page and your Twitter feed or whatever else. That way the employer will go directly to it. They won't have to Google you right away, but they probably will Google you at some point. You also want to register for a Google alert with your name. You want to make sure that you get feedback all the time. Put your name in quotes. Go to Google Alerts. They will send you every day an email, or every time your name appears somewhere, they'll send you an email so you can keep track of it. Now, so what do? You've gone on there and you've got some digital dirt. Well, the first thing you want to try to do is banish it. Can I get rid of it? Did a friend of mine post a picture that she tagged and now it's out there? Just write your friend or call them and say, please take it down. If they're really your friend, they'll do that. So you also can have your settings on Facebook that don't allow people to tag you without your permission. That's another good thing to do. Just don't let people tag you. If you can't banish, you can also go to websites and anywhere else and simply ask them to take it down. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. It just depends. So if you can't banish it, then the next step is to bury it. And the way you bury it is you have good things about you. So you immediately create a LinkedIn profile if you don't have one, because LinkedIn has very good search engine optimization. That means that they come to the top whenever there's a search done. If you have a LinkedIn profile, that's going to be the first thing most likely that's going to pop for you. So get a LinkedIn account. Do a Twitter feed. Start replying to bloggers in very intelligent ways and leave your name and your location. That way, when your name gets put into a Google search, those things are going to show up and you will bury that picture from some obscure newspaper article 3 years ago or whatever that you don't want people to see. And then finally, you know, this sort of goes in with bury it. You bury things by building your good presence. That's how you want to get started. So you can just start to build what is out there about you, and it will look good. So some final thoughts about all of this. Social media is too large and it's too important not to participate. I know I've had students who say, I'm going into a field that has nothing to do with social media. I'm going into construction. Why on earth would I need social media? And so we did a search. This was somebody who wants to start a business in construction, in the construction field. And immediately we found professional organizations that have to do with his topic who have Twitter feeds. We found all sorts of blogs that were related to the construction industry and that various manufacturers were putting out. Manufacturers often have blogs about their new products. There's all kinds of reasons, regardless of your career field, to be in social media. So that's just really important. It's also important to let people know you're looking for a job. If that's part of the reason you're on social media, don't hide it then. You know, put that out there. So things like tweeting. I just uploaded my resume for my future career in marketing research. Take a look, you know, and then you have a link. You have a link to your LinkedIn profile where your resume is. And you want to make sure, of course, your LinkedIn profile says you're looking. And once again, Facebook when appropriate. You can set up a professional friends list, and if somebody professional signs on to your Facebook, you can very much limit what they can see. But that, again, gets a little confusing, and personally I think it's easier just not to use Facebook in that realm. If you only choose one social media outlook, LinkedIn, and make the most of it. You know, that's the one. If your students are overwhelmed, as long as they do a LinkedIn profile, let them go on everything else. And then you definitely want to hyperlink your LinkedIn and Twitter accounts on your resume, on your email, any place where employers are going to potentially see it so that they can connect to you much more easily. I also want to mention that I didn't say this at the beginning. I think next time we meet, our topic is introverts and shy people, and really social media can be a very nice way for folks who are not as comfortable in reaching out and grabbing and shaking somebody's hand. This can really be a great way to start a conversation and get a conversation going. So I think we have time here for questions. I want to thank you so much for doing this. These are two resources I highly recommend. Personal Branding for Dummies by Susan Critton, I guess is her name. I find this to be very well written, very helpful, just chock full of good advice. So recommend it to your students to read, and certainly you should read it and think about it for your office. And then Me 2.0 by Dan Straubel, I mentioned him earlier. That's again a book that's really for students and I think is very helpful. So that's sort of the end of my part, I think. And so now I think maybe I should open it back up and see what's going on.
Hi, Kate. This is Kate Alder. That was really great. Lots of interesting, and I'm not a career development specialist, but I'm looking at ways that you gave me some really good tips too, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Great.
I only have one comment. I don't have any questions.
Okay.
Janine Cerrito just wanted to let you know, or actually let all the attendees know, that there's a discussion posted on the Career Cafe Ning network regarding how they're using social media on the college campuses and in the career centers. So access to the discussion is on the main page of the Career Cafe Ning. So for all of you attendees, if you're not already signed up for the Ning, which is the Career Cafe's little social media piece, please make sure you do that. If you have questions, you can email me or email Janine. So I'm going to open up the microphones for Rita and for Susan also in case they'd like to add anything else.
No, I don't, Kate. That was awesome. Again, I think it's something that I know is harder for us if I'm not using it all the time. There's so much to know, so I really appreciate kind of this updated information. But if any of you out there have any other questions, this is a chance to ask Kate while we have her here with us. So please feel free to. That's all I have for now, Kate Alder.
Well, if we're waiting on questions, I can tell you in terms of the student who had the mugshot show up, one of the things I did do was refer him to our university. We have a legal service for students. There's some lawyers and law students who provide legal guidance. I did send the student to that just in the off chance, because in his case, his record was supposed to be expunged. And if their records are expunged, then those mugshot sites are not supposed to post them. So I did refer him to that service to see if there was a way that could be done. And if you're dealing with a younger population, and it's more likely with younger population that their records are expunged, then they definitely want to speak with a lawyer. But I can tell you, unfortunately, those sites are legal, so they can do that.
Great. Kate, can you just mention one thing about the January 25th session on dealing with the quiet clients?
Sure. This is a subject that I find a lot of people are interested in. They are dealing with students who are more introverted in their style, and those students have a lot of struggles with the job search because America's a very extroverted country to begin with, and then not only that, job search is very extroverted, and they tell me I feel phony, I don't feel like myself when I go to an interview, I'm quiet naturally, why should I have to sound like a cheerleader? And so it's working through that process with students that becomes really important, letting them know, how to use their skills, and also helping them become aware of the power of introversion, what their skills really are, and how they can highlight that. And that's what I'm hoping to cover.
Oh, that's great, Kate. Thank you. Okay, Kate Alder, unless you have anything else, we will sign off and let people get back to their day. And thank you so much to everyone for attending, and we'll see you all in 2 weeks.
Thank you, Rita.
Yes, see you then.
Thank you, ladies. Have a nice weekend.
Okay, bye.